Hello everyone, welcome back. I want to start with a question that physics teachers love to trick students with. If I drop a 150-pound guy and a 250-pound guy from the same height, who hits the ground first? Your gut instinct says the heavy guy, right? But looking back at Galileo, we know that's wrong. Gravity's democratic. It pulls us all at the same speed. In a vacuum, a feather and a hammer fall together. So, if you're a heavy worker, carrying tools, boots, and muscle, you might think, I fall at the same speed as the small guy, so I'm safe. And that is exactly where the danger lies. Gravity might be fair, but kinetic energy is ruthless. And this is where we have to talk about Sir Isaac Newton. You see, speed isn't what hurts you, it's the stop. The video you just saw flashed a formula. That is the formula for kinetic energy. See that? M, that's mass, that's you. While the 150-pound guy and the 250-pound guy are falling at the same speed, the 250-pound guy is generating nearly double the kinetic energy. He isn't just a falling object, he is a falling anvil compared to a falling apple. The real-world problem, the lanyard. Now, look at your gear. Specifically, that standard shock-absorbing lanyard inside that pack is folded webbing, designed to rip apart to slow you down. It's a brake system, but standard brakes are designed for standard cars. If you put the brakes of a Honda Civic on a Mack truck, what happens? They burn out. The standard lanyard is calibrated to a specific energy level. If you are the heavy worker, usually over 310 pounds combined with tools, you are bringing more energy to the fight than that lanyard can handle. If that shock absorber rips all the way out, bottoming out, and you are still moving, that remaining energy has nowhere to go but into your spine and your internal organs. The physics don't lie. 1. Galileo says you fall at the same speed. 2. Newton says you hit with way more force. So, if you are a heavy worker, check your tag. Do not use a standard lanyard if you are outside the weight class. Get a heavy-duty rating. When gravity calls, you want to ensure your equipment is sufficiently strong to respond. Stay safe. Alright, raise your hand if you've heard this one. I'm a big guy, but gravity pulls everyone at the same speed. So my fall protection works the same as the skinny guys, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. And here's why that way of thinking is dangerous. The car crash analogy. Think of it like this. If a Mini Cooper and a dump truck are both driving at 60 miles per hour, they are going the same speed. But if they both hit a brick wall, which one hits harder? The truck, obviously. That is you. If you are a heavy worker, meaning you plus your tools are over 310 pounds, you aren't the Mini Cooper, you're the dump truck. The gear failure. Now, look at your lanyard. See that shock absorber pack? That is your braking system. It's designed to tear open to slow you down, but standard lanyards are built for standard weight. When a heavy worker falls on a standard lanyard, you have too much kinetic energy. You blow right through the brakes. The lanyard rips all the way out, bottoms out, and suddenly you go from moving to stopping instantly. The takeaway, when the lanyard runs out of room to give, your body has to take the rest of the hit. That is how spines get broken. Don't trust the speed argument, respect the energy. Check your tags. If you're heavy, get heavy-duty gear. Don't be the truck with bicycle brakes. Welcome back everyone. In construction safety, we often conflate acceleration with force. We look at Galileo's principle that all objects fall at the same rate of acceleration due to gravity, and we assume this creates an equal playing field for fall protection. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of Newtonian physics, specifically the relationship between mass and kinetic energy. The formula, as shown in the diagram, the formula for kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. While velocity remains constant between a 150 pounds worker and a 300 pounds worker, the mass variable doubles. This means the input energy to the fall arrest system effectively doubles. This brings us to the energy absorber capacity. The mechanical limit, a standard ANSI Z259 shock absorbing lanyard, is an energy management device. It manages energy by tearing webbing over a specific distance, usually 3.5 to 4 feet. This process creates work to negate the kinetic energy. However, energy absorbers have a finite capacity. They are calibrated to absorb a specific maximum joule count. If the input energy, the falling worker, exceeds the absorber capacity, the lanyard, the device fully deploys before the worker has stopped. The result, spiking arrest force. Once that webbing is fully extended, the system becomes static. The remaining energy results in a substantial spike in impact force, which is transferred directly to the dorsal D-ring. This spike often exceeds the body's biomechanical limit, causing severe internal trauma. Safety isn't just about gravity, it is about energy management. Ensure your equipment rating matches your mass.
What gravity actually does to you. We examine the invisible assassin, which is kinetic energy of the fall.
The perfect crime. Did you know there is a killer on every job site? You can't see it, you can't hear it, and until the very last second, you can't even feel it. The video you just watched refers to it as the invisible assassin. In physics, it is called kinetic energy. Most of us have a false sense of security because of a guy named Galileo. We learned in school that if you drop a feather and a hammer in a vacuum, they fall at the same speed. So the big guy and the small guy think we fall the same, so we're safe. But falling isn't what kills you. Stopping is. The weapon, the math. While Galileo was right about speed, Sir Isaac Newton is the one you need to worry about. He gave us the formula you saw on screen, that M stands for mass, that is you, and that V, that's velocity. Here is the terrifying truth. As you fall, you are turning into a human missile. You are building up energy, and because energy cannot be destroyed, it has to go somewhere. When you hit the end of your line, that energy has to be unloaded.
Kinetic energy of the fall is one of the most important aspects.
The evidence, the lanyard. Now, look at your lanyard. See that little pouch? That is a shock absorber. It's designed to rip apart to absorb that energy so your body doesn't have to. But it has a limit. It is calibrated for a standard falling object. If you are a heavy worker wearing tool belts, steel toes, and winter gear, you are overloading the equation. You are bringing more kinetic energy to the fight than that lanyard was built to handle. When that shock absorber rips all the way out and you are still moving, the invisible assassin stops hiding. The verdict, the remaining energy bypasses the gear and goes directly into your spine, internal organs, and neck. So, the next time you suit up, don't just ask, is this tied off? Ask yourself, can this handle my energy? Check the weight rating. If you are a heavy worker, you need heavy-duty gear. Don't let the invisible assassin catch you unprepared. Respect the physics, and you'll make it home. Okay, folks, we often talk about gravity as a constant force. It's reliable, it's fair, but there is a hidden element in every fall that doesn't play fair. The video you see here is titled Invisible Assassin. In physics terms, it is kinetic energy. When you are working at height, you don't fear the fall itself, you fear the stop. Because While you are falling, you are building up a debt. And when you hit the end of your lanyard, gravity comes to collect. The calculation, 6 feet of danger. Let's put a number on it. Take a standard 6-foot free fall. It doesn't sound like much. You might think, I can jump down 6 feet, but a free fall on a lanyard is different. Using the physics shown on screen, that short drop releases approximately 1,790 J of energy. Now, joules sounds like a classroom word, it sounds harmless, so let's translate that into pain. The reality check, what 1,790 joules feels like. If you took that 1,790 joules and turned it into a physical object hitting your chest, it wouldn't be a pillow. According to the data, it is the equivalent of taking a 90 miles per hour fastball directly to the ribs. It is the same energy impact as a full force sledgehammer swing. It is comparable to a small car crash. That is what is waiting for you at the bottom of a 6-foot drop if your gear doesn't do its job. The solution? Heat versus hurt. This is why the shock absorber is the most critical component on your back. Its job is to take that sledgehammer swing and convert it into heat energy by ripping apart stitches rather than transferring it into impact force on your spine. So, the next time you clip in, remember the math. You aren't just protecting yourself from the ground. You are protecting yourself from the invisible assassin, the massive spike of kinetic energy that wants to turn your body into a crumple zone. Trust the physics, trust your gear.
Fall protection physics. Where does the energy go? The first law of thermodynamics. Energy changes form.
Can you taste the fear now? As we dive even further, we need to talk about the invisible assassin. You can't see it, but it's hiding in every fall. It is kinetic energy. We often think gravity is the enemy, but gravity is just the vehicle. Energy is the crash. The video on physics debates showed that while Galileo says we all fall at the same speed, Newton says that mass determines force. As you fall, you are accumulating energy, and that energy has to go somewhere. Let's get specific. In a standard 6-foot free fall, a worker generates roughly 1,790 joules of energy. That number sounds abstract, so let's translate it into pain. 1,790 joules is equivalent to a 90 miles per hour fastball to the chest. It is the same force as a full swing from a sledgehammer. It is a small car crash. If you stop suddenly, your body takes the impact. That is why we need a system to manage that violence. The bungee myth and thermodynamics. This brings us to the bungee cord myth. People ask, why don't we use bungees? They're soft. Here is the problem. The first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. A bungee cord stores energy and returns it to you. It turns a fall into a slingshot. You go down, you snap back up. That rebound can be just as deadly as the fall itself. The solution. Heat, not hurt. We don't want to store the energy, we want to kill it. That is why your lanyard rips apart. As shown in the diagram, stitching tiers create friction. We are using physics to convert that kinetic energy into heat energy. We are literally burning off the energy so it doesn't break your bones. When inspecting your gear, remember, you aren't looking for a spring. You are looking for a shock absorber. You want the heat, not the hurt.
Kinetic energy of the fall is converted into heat energy.
The bungee cord myth. Does this make your heart race? Alright, I get asked this all the time. Why do I need this expensive, specialized, shock-absorbing lanyard? Why can't I use a heavy-duty bungee cord? it works for bungee jumpers off bridges, right? It's a fair question. But the difference between a bungee jump and a construction fall is the difference between a thrilling weekend and a closed casket. The reason comes down to fundamental physics, storage versus destruction. The physics. Think of a bungee cord like a giant spring. When you stretch a spring, what does it do? It stores energy. If a 220-pound worker falls 6 feet on a bungee cord, they generate massive kinetic energy. The bungee cord catches them, stretches, and stores all that kinetic energy as potential energy. Now, here is the first law of thermodynamics in action. That stored energy has to go somewhere. A spring doesn't want to stay stretched, so it violently contracts. It slingshots you right back up where you came from. If you're jumping off a bridge into open air, that rebound is fun. If you are falling off a steel beam on a job site, that rebound smashes you straight back into the structure you just fell off of with crushing force. The solution and takeaway. A real fall protection lanyard is designed to do the exact opposite of a bungee cord. It is not designed to store energy, it is designed to destroy it. Inside that little pack on your back is specially woven webbing. When you fall, the impact force rips those stitches apart. That tearing action is friction. The lanyard is sacrificing itself, converting your lethal falling energy into harmless heat, bringing you to a dead stop with no bounce. So, leave the bungee cords for vacation. On the job site, you don't want to store energy, you want to destroy it. Can you feel the adrenaline choking you? We talk a lot about fall distances and safety regulations, but it's all very abstract. What does a fall actually feel like? If you screw up and step off a ledge, what is about to happen to your body? To answer that, we have to stop looking at safety manuals and start looking at physics. We need to calculate the energy. Let's take a standard scenario. A 220-pound worker falls just 6 feet. That's terrifying, but it doesn't look that high from the ground. When we run the physics calculation for that weight and that distance, we find that just before impact, the worker has generated approximately 1,790 joules of kinetic energy. Now, 1,790 joules is just a number. Let's make it real. That is roughly the same impact energy as getting hit in the chest by a 90 miles per hour Major League fastball. Or picture a full-grown man swinging a 12-pound sledgehammer as hard as he can directly into your hips. The solution and takeaway. Now, here is the terrifying part. If you are wearing a static rope, something with no stretch, that entire 1,790 joules is applied to your body instantly. It's not a slow press, it's a violent slam. Your pelvis, your spine, and your internal organs have to absorb a sledgehammer swing in a fraction of a second. They will fail. Your shock-absorbing lanyard is the only thing standing between you and that sledgehammer. It takes that massive number 1,790 joules and spreads it out over time, making the difference between a rescue and a recovery. Does this spark a new idea? Did you know that your fall protection gear is engineered to burn? I don't mean catch fire in an accident. I mean that its primary mechanism for saving your life involves generating intense, localized heat right against your back. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's the only way to satisfy the laws of physics during a fall. We know from the first law of thermodynamics that energy cannot just disappear. When you fall, you generate massive kinetic energy. To stop you safely, that energy must be converted into another form. If you've ever seen a deployed shock pack, you know it looks like ripped fabric. Inside that pack are layers of webbing stitched tightly together. When you hit the end of the line, the force rips those stitches apart. Rub your hands together fast, they get hot, right? That's friction. Now imagine multiplying that friction by a factor of 1,000 inches a split second. The tearing, of your lanyard is actually a massive friction event. The solution and takeaway. If we were to film a real fall deployment with a high-speed thermal camera, you would see that the little pack glow brightly for a fraction of a second. Your lanyard is a thermal converter. It is designed as a sacrificial part. It literally burns off the lethal energy of the fall using friction so that your body doesn't have to absorb it by breaking bones. It gets hot, so you can go home. Shall we dig a little deeper? We think of G-force as something only fighter pilots or astronauts have to worry about. A highly trained fighter pilot in a high-tech G-suit can handle about 9 G-forces before they pass out. But if you fall off a ladder on a construction site wearing the wrong gear, you could be hit with 20 G-forces or more. That's not just passing out, that is lethal internal damage. How can a short fall create more G-forces than a fighter jet? It's all about stopping distance. Imagine driving a car at 60 miles per hour and hitting a solid concrete wall. You stop instantly. The G-forces are massive, and you probably won't survive. Now imagine hitting a giant net that stretches 20 feet before stopping you. You still stop, but it takes longer. The G-forces are much lower, and you walk away. A fall on a static rope is on the concrete wall. You go from falling speed to 0 in milliseconds. The deceleration is so violent that it tears your organs. The solution and takeaway. Your shock-absorbing lanyard is the safety net. When those stitches rip, the lanyard actually gets longer, usually by about 3.5 feet. By extending the stopping distance, it buys you time. It absorbs the lethal 20 G-forces impact and distributes them, keeping the force on your body below 900 pounds, which is roughly the survival limit for the human body. The lanyard doesn't just stop you, it decelerates you gently enough to survive. Fascinated by the physics of the job site? If you want to master the art of working smarter, not just harder, hit that subscribe button. Let's build a career that's easier on the body and sharper in the mind. Work safe, stay safe. About to lose your lunch? Here's a physics pop quiz. If a 150-pound guy and a 250-pound guy fall off the same roof, who falls faster? Galileo taught us that in the absence of air resistance, they fall at the same speed. But if they fall at the same speed, why do we need special heavy-duty fall protection for bigger workers? The physics. The answer comes from Sir Isaac Newton. Force equals mass times acceleration. F equals ma. They might be falling at the same speed, but the 250-pound worker has much more mass. That means that when they reach the end of the line, they generate significantly greater impact force and kinetic energy. Standard shock absorbers are tuned like a fuse. They are designed to tear apart and generate heat at a specific rate for an average worker. The solution and takeaway. If you put a 300-pound worker on a standard lanyard, they generate too much energy too quickly. The friction generates such intense heat that it can melt the webbing fibers faster than it slows the worker, leading to catastrophic failure. Heavy-duty gear isn't just thicker, it's engineered with different stitching patterns and materials to handle that higher energy load and dissipate that extra heat safely. Physics doesn't care how tough you are. If you exceed the energy rating of your gear, gravity wins. Why struggle when you can strategize? If you found this fascinating, hit subscribe. We're here to make you a more intellectual, efficient builder. Keep your standards high and your risks low. Work safe, stay safe. Your pulse racing, vision blurring, falling on the job is a nightmare scenario. But if it happens to you, there's one specific sound you desperately want to hear. It's a loud, violent, tearing noise right behind your head. It sounds terrifying, like your gear is breaking. But in the physics of fall protection, that violent ripping noise is actually the sound of survival. We've discussed how shock absorbers work by tearing internal stitching to generate friction and dissipate energy. Well, physics is noisy. That loud RIP is the auditory evidence that work is being done. It's the sound of kinetic energy safely leaving the system. Consider the alternative. You fall 6 feet, the line goes tight, and there is dead silence. The solution and takeaway. Silence is the most terrifying thing on a job site. If you fall and it's silent, it means one of two things happened. One, you weren't wearing a shock absorber, and that silent, massive impact energy just went directly into snapping your spine. Or two, the energy was so great that it didn't rip the lanyard, it ripped your anchor point right out of the concrete. When it comes to fall protection, violence is good. That ripping sound means the gear is taking the beating, so your body doesn't have to. Turn your job site experience into expertise. If you like working smart, join the channel. Let's make you the most valuable player on the team. Work safe, stay safe. Can you feel your heart trying to escape your chest? Common sense tells us that the higher you fall, the worse the injury. A 20-foot fall is worse than a 10-foot fall. But what if I told you there is a strange quirk in the physics of fall protection, where a 6-foot fall can sometimes be more dangerous to your body than a slightly longer fall? We call it the awkward middle ground of physics, or the 6-foot death zone. It all comes down to the acceleration curve of your shock absorber. Think of the tearaway stitching inside your lanyard like the tab on a soda can. It takes a certain amount of initial force to open it, right? In the first couple of feet of a fall, you haven't built up enough speed to generate the force needed to start ripping those stitches. So, if you fall 2 feet, you just get a hard jerk. It hurts, but the lanyard acts like a static rope because the shock absorber hasn't engaged yet. The solution and takeaway. The danger zone is around the 5 to 7 foot mark. You are moving fast enough to generate a significant body-damaging force, but you may not have enough energy to fully deploy the shock absorber. You get the worst of both worlds, high impact force and minimal shock dampening. This is why proper tie-off height is critical. You want to avoid falls entirely, of course. But if you do fall, you don't want to be in that physics death zone where you are moving too fast for comfort, but too slow for the gear to work perfectly. If this topic sparked your interest, imagine what else you could learn. We're all about optimizing the workflow. Click subscribe to become the smartest worker on the site. Work safe, stay safe. Do you realize how screwed you are? We spend a lot of time talking about lanyards and harnesses, but there's a silent partner in this tug of war against gravity, the anchor point. Here is the scary reality. If your shock-absorbing lanyard fails to do its job, maybe it's frozen solid in winter, or someone painted over the pack and hardened it. The physics of the fall doesn't just go away. Remember, energy cannot be destroyed. It only transfers. A 220-pound worker falling 6 feet generates roughly 1,800 joules of energy. The shock absorber is supposed to burn that off. If deployment fails, the lanyard becomes a solid steel cable. That massive, instantaneous impact force has to go somewhere. It travels straight up the line to your D-ring bolt, your beam clamp, or your concrete anchor. The solution and takeaway. Most certified anchor points are rated for 5,000 pounds. That sounds like a lot, but a nasty fall on a static system can exceed that in a heartbeat. We see this in failure analysis. The worker's harness held, the lanyard held, but the violent, undamped force ripped the 5,000-pound anchor right out of the concrete wall. It's a deadly tug of war. If the shock absorber doesn't yield, the weakest link in the chain will. Make sure that the weakest link isn't the thing bolting you to the building. Are you tired of doing things the hard way? Subscribe to change that. Work safe, stay safe. I see this happen on job sites way too often. A guy is working on a platform, he slips, drops maybe 2 feet, and his lanyard catches him. He pulls himself back up, brushes himself off, says, "I'm good," and returns to work using the same gear. He just made a potentially fatal mistake. He is now relying on what we call spent fuel. We know shock absorbers work by friction, tearing internal stitching. Think of that stitching like the fuel in a rocket. Once you burn it, it's gone. In that little 2-foot micro fall, he might not have seen the pack rip open, but inside, the force was enough to stretch the fibers and pop some of those initial activation stitches. He has used up some of the lanyard's friction potential. The solution and takeaway. This is invisible damage. The gear looks fine on the outside, but if he falls again later that day, a real big fall, that lanyard doesn't have its full capacity to absorb energy anymore. It might fail completely or deploy too fast, snapping his spine. Fall protection gear is one and done. Like a car's airbag, even a minor deployment requires replacement. If you load that lanyard, even slightly, take it out of service. Don't trust your life to spent fuel. Is your brain working overtime on this? I've heard old-timers say, I don't need to tie off. If I slip, I'm quick. I'll just grab the beam. I hate to bruise your ego, but no, you won't. And I can prove it with basic human biology and physics. You will fall nearly 4 feet before your brain even processes the fact that you are falling. The average human reaction time to a surprise event is about 1/4 of a second. That's the time it takes for your eyes to see you're slipping. Send a signal to your brain and for your brain to tell your hands to grab something. Gravity, however, is instantaneous. In that 1/4 of a second where your brain is just figuring out what's happening, gravity has already pulled you down about 1 foot and you are accelerating rapidly. By the time your hand actually closes to grab that beam, maybe half a second later, you are already 4 feet down and moving at 11 miles per hour. The solution and takeaway. You cannot catch yourself falling at 11 miles per hour. It's physically impossible. Your grip strength cannot overcome that kind of kinetic energy. This is why we rely on engineering, not reflexes. Your gear doesn't need reaction time. It works instantly because the laws of physics are faster than your nervous system. Don't bet your life on being fast. Bet it on being tied off. Pretty cool stuff, right? If you want to keep your brain sharp and your day smooth, hit subscribe. Let's be better builders together. Work safe, stay safe. Bye for now.
The physics of falling. Bungee cord versus lanyard. Why this kills you.